The Ukrainian Armed Forces struck a huge enemy warehouse containing tens of thousands of drones. Orbán has put the troops on combat alert. They will be protecting the Druzhba oil pipeline. Nuclear weapons will soon be in Ukraine. Where did Putin get this fake from and why? The Ukrainian Armed Forces entered the enemy's rear and destroyed the command post. You have to see this. Dozens of officers are KIA. A new level of Ukrainian air defense. All missiles were shot down during the latest attack. Everyone in the Kremlin is in shock. You have to see this. Ukrainian Armed Forces robots are smashing an entire Russian unit. Putin wants to live to 150. They're already stamping out spare parts for him. They've made a new heart. There will be no peace. Putin is preparing to announce a new wave of mobilization. It reaches London in 8 minutes. The Kremlin is threatening with a new missile they've called Son of the Hazelnut. Ukraine is expanding its military-industrial complex and opening a drone factory in the UK. How Governor Gladkov was told off. Right on the street. Spoiler, it was loud. In Russia, celebrating Maslenitsa was called Nazism, and those celebrating were packed into police vans. Hello, my name is Katerina Nesterenko, and right now here are the main stories. But first, please like this video and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you again. Across the expanses of YouTube, gas pipelines are no longer in use. Now, Russian soldiers at the front are moving underground. Russian propagandists have shown an underground city in the so-called Russian Federation. Supposedly, this is in the combat zone.
At the heart of the underground command post is a situation center with dozens of monitors which display live footage from reconnaissance drones and strike copters.
Judging by the video, the tunnel is so large that a car can drive through it. According to Russian war correspondents, the underground passages lead to the command post of the 36th Brigade, which is allegedly buried about 3 meters deep and covered with a powerful protective dome made of concrete, logs, and earth. Is this really the case? Open. Thus, the Russian army wants to protect itself from Ukrainian drones, aerial bombs, and missiles.
More to the right, more to the right. He needs to go in. Let him go more to the right. What cattle? Does he see that he is not there? See?
The ineffectiveness of such a structure is questionable, since Ukrainian drones have recently been actively flying directly inside. Warehouses with ammunition and weapons. But the Ukrainian Defense Forces also operate the old-fashioned way, by hand. For example, Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces on the northern Slobozhansky direction infiltrated the enemy's rear and planted explosives there. As a result, a significant number of occupiers were eliminated, and the enemy's infiltration route in the area was cut off. The enemy is also being eliminated with the help of ground-based robotic systems. These are shots from the Pokrovsk direction. An operator of the Ukrainian NRK-32 from a separate mechanized brigade eliminated 2 Russian occupiers with machine gun fire in the Pokrovsk direction. I never cease to admire the courage and heroism of Ukrainian soldiers. They are holding the front and standing up to a vast horde, who outnumber them significantly. That's why I urge you to support the armed forces of Ukraine. And if you can't do so financially, write them words of support in the comments. I know they are watching us. They promised and they delivered. Advanced changes in the operation of Ukrainian air defense have already begun. According to the advisor to the Minister of Defense, Serhiy Sternenko, systemic changes have begun to improve the effectiveness of Ukrainian air defense. And these are not just words. During the Russian attack on February 26th, absolutely all cruise and anti-ship missiles launched at Ukraine by the Putin regime were shot down.
During the latest air attacks, the percentage of enemy cruise missiles shot down has increased significantly. The number of intercepted strike UAVs is also growing. This is only the beginning of those systemic changes to improve the efficiency of using available resources, which are being implemented by the Ministry of Defense.
But at the same time, a new threat has emerged. For the first time, a Russian drone using fiber optics reached Kharkiv.
These are real threats that we will have to address technologically. Detection based on electronic intelligence will not work here. Radars will help. But in the case of low-flying FPVs, even they are not a cure-all. Acoustics might help.
At the same time, Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, spoke about scaling up the construction of anti-drone nets in border areas. The focus is on logistical routes and roads that support the livelihoods of communities near the line of combat.
In just 1 month, we increased the pace from 5 kilometers per day in January to 12 kilometers in February. This has significantly improved the safety of military movements and ensured the stable operation of frontline communities. Already in March, we plan to cover 20 kilometers of roads per day. By the end of the year, we plan to equip another 4,000 kilometers of roads with anti-drone protection.
Reading the comments under previous episodes, I see that many of our viewers are from Kazakhstan, Moldova, Europe, and even the USA. We Ukrainians are very grateful for your support and proud to have such sensible viewers. Write under this episode which country you're watching us from and whether people there support our fight against the empire of evil. I always enjoy reading your comments, and in the meantime, we continue. Next comes the most interesting part. We knew that Putin's team was actively working on prolonging his life, since the bunker dweller dreams of immortality. But until now, we didn't realize just how far things had gone. It turns out that Russian scientists are working on creating artificial organs for Putin. Moreover, Putin himself talked about it. Of course, it's presented as such. It's portrayed as a treatment that will be available to everyone in the future, but in reality, it's all for the Tsar and his cronies. And
even tissues, blood vessels, and what else? Things that are no longer science fiction, individual human organs. However, to be fair, they haven't yet managed to create, let's say, a living heart, but that's the direction they're moving in.
I wonder, are they not working on creating an artificial brain for Putin? There are plenty of people in Russia who could use one right now. But let's continue with the scientific news from the dictator. Putin, in his generosity, also tossed a little to the Russians. The Tsar generously donated a whole vaccine for some unknown reason, but he promised to inject everyone.
Vaccines, which is important, I would really like to. My colleague Igor consistently promises me in advance every single year that such vaccines will be ready and available for distribution in the very near future.
But the main thing is that it doesn't turn out like with the coronavirus vaccine. Sputnik V. After 9 injections, Zhirinovsky went to Kapson's concert. Ukrainian plant on British soil, the first Ukrainian defense enterprise producing drones, has opened in the UK. According to Ukrainian ambassador Valery Zalushny, this concerns the production site of the company Ukrsystem.
Ukraine is fighting under constant missile strikes, destruction of infrastructure, and threats to its industries. And our engineers are creating solutions that are born directly from frontline experience. They improve systems not based on theoretical research, but on the results of real combat use. That's why launching production in the UK has a deep strategic logic. And
although production is being integrated into the UK's defense ecosystem, the center of engineering expertise remains in Ukraine. This, like other Ukrainian enterprises abroad, opens up a new level of partnership, where allies not only support each other, but jointly build a unified industrial foundation for security. I can already hear the propagandists howling. After all, this means that not only is the West supplying weapons to Ukraine, but Ukraine is also expanding its defense industry, and even abroad. Missiles and bombs are being brought to Ukraine from the UK and France. We're talking about hammer bombs and LMM missiles. What are these munitions and how can they impact the situation?
This is a strike on an ammunition depot and occupier positions with AASM hammer bombs in the Belgorod region. The launch was carried out by MiG-29 fighter jets. The AASM Hammer is a guided aerial bomb with a 250-kilogram warhead, a smaller counterpart to the Russian Cabs. France is now preparing record deliveries of ASM guided aerial bombs. Hammer bombs for Ukraine. This was reported by the Ministry of Defense.
Ukraine and France are continuing to work on a record level of deliveries of ASM-guided aerial bombs. Hammer bombs for our country. In the French Air and Space Force, AASM hammer bombs can be used from a whole range of aircraft. In particular, they are compatible with the F-16, Dassault Rafale, Mirage 2000D, and others. In the Ukrainian Air Force, these bombs have been adapted for launches from MiG-29 aircraft. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
Thanks to the guidance unit, which can use inertial, satellite, laser or infrared targeting, these bombs hit their targets with a deviation of up to 10 meters. The booster allows them to destroy enemy targets at distances of up to 70 kilometers. Therefore, aircraft can drop them from a safe distance. In 2025, the Ukrainian Air Force systematically carried out strikes with AASM Hammer missiles not only on military targets in the occupied part of Ukraine, but also in the Kursk and Belgorod regions. France is significantly ramping up production of these aerial bombs. In 2025, 1,200 AASM Hammers were produced compared to 830 in 2024. The first 50 aerial bombs were delivered to Ukraine back at the beginning of 2024. And that's not all the good news for protecting Ukrainian skies from constant drone attacks. The United Kingdom will supply 1,000 Element interceptor missiles. This was announced by the British Ministry of Defense.
The United Kingdom plans to supply another 1,000 lightweight multi-purpose missiles manufactured in Belfast, which will be crucial for protecting Ukrainian infrastructure and cities from the increasing drone and missile attacks from Russia. The UK Ministry of Defense.
In addition, Ukraine will receive air defense systems worth nearly $600 million. Thus, in the coming months, the United Kingdom will deliver an additional 1,200 air defense missiles and 200,000 artillery shells to Kyiv as part of the Air Defense Consortium. On the 4th anniversary of the start of the full-scale invasion, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stated that Ukraine can count on his country's support until victory is achieved.
On this somber anniversary, our message to the Ukrainian people is simple. The United Kingdom stands with you stronger than ever. That is why today we are announcing new support and will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes.
In addition to various missiles included in the new aid package, Britain is providing $27 million for energy assistance, repairs, and new facilities, as well as $7.5 million in humanitarian aid for frontline communities.
You won't believe it, but in Russia, they finally found an official who wasn't afraid to be sent. The lucky ticket went to the governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov. After recovering from the incredible humiliation, the official said that in the morning he asked a local resident to give him a ride to work. But the person refused. The governor was so upset he was nearly in tears and ended up being late for work.
Good morning, dear friends. Today's morning updates are coming in late. I apologize. There is a valid reason. It seems to me, I was returning from a business trip. The train broke down, stopped not far from Belgorod. I got out, tried to find a car, saw a local resident. I think it was right in the village. Or maybe he was from a nearby village. I introduced myself and asked for a ride to the railway crossing. I think it was about 600 to 700 meters away, not far, because the crossing was closed. There was already a car waiting there, which had been sent to the rescue by Oleg Alexandrovich Medvedev, the head of the Yagolsky district. The nearby local resident firmly refused to cooperate.
And can you imagine? Gladkov genuinely doesn't understand why he, a whole governor of an entire region, was refused such a simple request. I know it sounds strange, but Oreshnik has had children. To be precise, a son. That's exactly what they called the new missile in the Russian Federation, based on the old Putin-era Wunderwaffe, son of Oreshnik. A Russian correspondent from Komsomolskaya Pravda reported on its creation, citing the British model Mail. Now, Russian media across the board are writing that the West is terrified of Russia's new development. After all, the son of Oreshnik can reach London in just 8 minutes. But considering Russia's experience with using simpler missiles, what will actually happen is that on TV it will be 8 minutes to London, but in reality just a few minutes to the nearest Russian field, which in fact has already happened. For example, on the night of February 26th, when a Russian Kh-22 missile intended to attack Ukraine landed in the Bryansk region. It seems that in Russia even the missiles have problems with geography. The Russian repressive machine missed the mark and convicted the wrong person. It's not like this is the first unjust verdict, but this time Putin's security forces have outdone themselves. In Russia, a pro-Kremlin political analyst who supports Putin, a certain Sergei Markov, was fined. He was found guilty under the law on foreign agents and fined 35,000 rubles. He appeared in court wearing a For Russia t-shirt. As they say, the revolution devours its own children. The circus around the Druzhba oil pipeline is gaining momentum after loud statements about electricity blackmail. Take Hungary as an example. Viktor Orbán announced the deployment of troops at a number of key energy facilities.
The Ukrainian government is putting pressure on Hungary and Slovakia through an oil blockade. I have listened to the reports from the National Security Services. I see that Ukraine is preparing further actions to disrupt the operation of the Hungarian energy system. Therefore, I have given the order to strengthen the protection of critical energy infrastructure. This means that we will deploy soldiers and equipment to repel attacks near priority energy facilities. The police will patrol with reinforced forces around certain power plants, distribution stations, and control centers. And in the Szabolcs-Szatmár-Bereg region, I have ordered a ban on drone flights. Hungary cannot be blackmailed.
In addition, Orbán has officially appealed to the president of Ukraine, demanding a change in anti-Hungarian rhetoric.
I urge you to change your anti-Hungarian policy. We, the Hungarian people, are not responsible for the situation Ukraine finds itself in. We sympathize with the Ukrainian people, but we do not want to participate in the war. We do not want to finance military actions, and we do not want to pay more for energy resources.
But it seems what drives Orbán is not the desire to get oil, but the fear of losing power. Europe has turned its back on him, and on the eve of the election, the Hungarian opposition is rapidly pulling ahead. And to make matters worse, his fellow member of Putin's club? In Europe, he was accused of treason. And the accusation is directly related to his position on Ukraine. And here are the details in our report.
Orbán and Fico are increasing the pressure.
This is a setback and not the message we wanted to send.
Slovakia has stopped emergency electricity supplies to Ukraine.
We will lose a lot of money and we have the right to respond to this.
As a result of stopping emergency electricity supplies to Ukraine, it could happen that a hospital performing surgery on those wounded after a Russian strike will be left without power.
The Slovak opposition is preparing a criminal complaint against Fico for this decision.
Specifically, this involves the abuse of official authority and the crime of state treason, inhumanity, a terrorist act, and violation of duties in managing state property.
In addition, Prime Minister Robert Fico threatened to reconsider Slovakia's position on Ukraine's EU membership if the transfer of Russian oil to Slovakia is boycotted.
The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, tells us that we should buy gas and oil from anyone except Russia, even if it is more difficult and more expensive.
If restricting the supply of electricity to Ukraine proves difficult to implement, then the pressure regarding the allocation of a new tranche of aid from the European Union is now in question. Precisely because of Bratislava.
Despite the fact that we do not have the resources to lower electricity prices, Brussels intends to approve another military loan to Ukraine in the amount of 90 billion euros, of which Ukraine will not return a single cent. I believe it is absolutely right that Slovakia did not participate in approving this loan.
The EU Council has adopted 2 documents for loans totaling 90 billion for Ukraine. However, in addition to Fico, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is also blocking it.
We are coordinating our actions with the Slovaks, and if necessary, we will take this third step as well. We will not stand by idly as long as the Druzhba oil pipeline remains closed. We will ensure fuel supplies to Hungary and take the necessary countermeasures until deliveries resume.
The President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, accused Hungary of blackmail.
I wrote to Prime Minister Orbán that Hungary is violating the principle of fair and open cooperation. And he called on her to immediately join in the implementation of the decision taken by the European Council.
Orbán and Fico are well aware that Ukraine has nothing to do with the damage to the oil pipeline. Friendship. Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated that Ukraine wants to resolve the conflicts. We are ready for a direct meeting between President Volodymyr Zelensky and Orbán, but we have not yet received a positive response. Fico. Orbán is using the topic of oil and war to gain political dividends associated with the upcoming parliamentary elections in Hungary, where Orbán's position has been significantly undermined.
Is the pro-government, corrupt system not interested in the real problems of the people? And he doesn't even dare look them in the eyes.
The current Prime Minister of Hungary is trying to strengthen his position by using tough rhetoric towards Ukraine and the European Union.
If we have a government supported by Brussels, they will drag us into war. If we have a national government, we still have a chance to avoid it.
Power in Hungary has been in Orbán's hands for 16 years now. He continues to shift responsibility onto an external imaginary enemy.
The Brussels dead end is TISA, in exchange for a few pats on the back and immunity. They will agree to deals with Brussels and fulfill all their demands. They will say yes to war, to funding Ukraine, to settling migrants, and to gender propaganda.
The Tyza party, led by Peter Mader, is ahead of Viktor Orbán's political force. This can be called a historic moment for the country.
This is probably the key story in Europe right now. All eyes are, of course, watching, and all bets are on these April elections, because this could radically change the situation and bring pro-European forces back to power in Hungary. It will finally put an end to the issue that every time any sanctions or any measures to support Ukraine are adopted in Europe, it happens with such great difficulty. This center of resistance may finally disappear.
Holding on to power is a matter of personal freedom, and Robert Fico is in the same boat as his colleague. But they themselves risk losing funding from European funds, since Slovakia and Hungary are largely dependent on assistance from the European Union. At the moment, both Hungary and Slovakia can create temporary political and financial difficulties, in particular by delaying decisions on aid to Ukraine or its European integration. But the European Union can always invoke Article 7, which allows it to suspend a member state's voting rights.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Nuclear weapons will soon be in Ukraine? This is exactly the kind of propaganda that Russian intelligence agencies, together with the Kremlin, have started to spread. Putin is convinced that Britain and France are already transferring nuclear weapons technology to Ukraine. Why does Russia need this? Could this be a cover for a nuclear strike? And is it really possible for Ukraine to regain nuclear weapons? We will tell you all about this in our report. Nuclear weapons are on their way to Ukraine. That is exactly what was stated by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service.
Britain and France are preparing to arm Kyiv with a nuclear bomb, according to Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR. The British and French want to disguise the transfer of nuclear weapons to Kyiv as if Ukraine is developing them itself.
Naturally, this is fake information invented by Russia itself. Both France and Britain have already denied this information.
This is a clear attempt by Vladimir Putin to distract attention from his monstrous actions in Ukraine. There is not a shred of truth in this. You probably saw the Prime Minister's words this morning, in which he paid tribute to the incredible resilience of the Ukrainians. We will continue our efforts to ensure a just and lasting peace.
By the way, China has also stated that it has no relevant information about this. The dictator has also joined in on this fake story. Putin, in order to further spread this among the masses, even crawled out of his bunker to make a comment.
Well, now it's already out there in the mainstream media, which is probably just one of their many attempts, or their intention to even use some kind of nuclear component. They probably understand how this could end. At this very moment, our detailed operational and internal information is also being extensively covered and reported across various media outlets. Today. There should be some news, probably, if you have not had a chance to see anything yet, but it is actually about a possible explosion occurring of our natural gas systems located on the very bottom of the Black Sea.
History has already shown us, if Putin accuses Ukraine of something, it means he himself is planning to do it. That's how it was before with chemical weapons. First, he assured the whole world that Ukraine is planning to use chemical weapons against Russia, and a few days later, Russian soldiers attacked the Ukrainian Armed Forces with such weapons. To this day, the rhetoric hasn't changed, and Russia may stage a nuclear provocation. All of Putin's inner circle is already threatening Kyiv with a nuclear strike and the world with nuclear war. For example, Medvedev. And
the government of France is going to officially transfer advanced nuclear technologies to Ukraine for their energy needs.
We understand very well what this could threaten. This is a direct path to world war, and we have repeatedly stated the consequences of such steps. All of this is well known, yet such games are still taking place.
Moreover, in order to demonstrate panic and decisive action, the Federation Council is calling on the UN Security Council and the IAEA to conduct an investigation regarding the alleged intention of Britain and France to transfer to Kyiv nuclear explosive devices. But as experts say, this is quite a real tactic for the negotiation process.
But in reality, as the most likely reason for such rhetoric, the nuclear rhetoric especially against the backdrop of the expiration and non-renewal of the New START Treaty, which ended on February 5th, is due to the fact that the Russian Federation now wants to drag out the negotiation process and is not inclined toward what the United States is currently insisting on at Ukraine's initiative. Undoubtedly, this is a meeting at the leader level, because as we can see, the political subgroup essentially maintains the status quo. It maintains the status quo.
As we can see, Putin doesn't like the idea of meeting with Zelensky at all. Moreover, it is not advantageous for the dictator. He would be forced to fulfill agreements, and that is not in his sphere of interests. That is why he is now doing everything to have an advantage at the negotiating table and to delay the negotiation process itself.
The Russians have always done this. When they don't want something, they invent an external factor. Just recently, this was a mythologium. It was as if the Russians were shelled at the residence in Valdai. In short, Russia has used such methods more than once.
It is also quite a foolish way to further worsen the already complicated relations between Britain and the USA. Moreover, this could further demoralize the Ukrainian population. The Russian special services are betting heavily on this. And it's hard to believe that such a nuclear sensation was accidentally published precisely on the anniversary of the start of the full-scale war against Ukraine. In this way, Putin is closing the question for his people as to why the special military operation is taking so long. In Russia, they claim that nuclear components could be brought into Ukraine, so that Kyiv could create nuclear weapons on its own territory. And it is quite possible that Ukraine could regain its nuclear status because it could use these components to create its own nuclear arsenal. And
that would be a pretty good option in terms of ensuring security guarantees, meaning the subsequent non-aggression by the Russian Federation. That would undoubtedly be a good thing. Regardless of the specific circumstances, this security guarantee would only be fully put into effect and implemented after a ceasefire had been successfully achieved. That is to say, a thorough and comprehensive ceasefire agreement with the active participation of the United States in monitoring, the formalization of a dedicated peacekeeping contingent from a broad coalition of willing countries, and various other necessary measures along those lines. In other words, in order to talk about deploying foreign nuclear weapons on Ukrainian territory, you would also need to protect them and ensure their security.
But there is another but. There is a high cost to maintaining and supporting nuclear missiles during wartime. For Ukraine, this is very expensive. International oversight and the Ukrainian government itself deny any intention to restore nuclear status. Therefore, discussions about nuclear weapons for Ukraine are impossible and serve only Putin, who is trying to manipulate the entire world.
Putin is preparing a new mobilization. The real plans have been revealed in the US. The Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin, may be laying the groundwork for a new wave of limited reserve call-ups, trying in advance to soften public reaction to a possible reduction in payments to the military. This conclusion was reached by analysts at the Institute for the Study of War. The basis for this assessment was Putin's meeting on February 23rd with the widows of Russian servicemen who died in Ukraine. Here are the details. In
Moscow, a series of events took place involving Vladimir Putin, which are being discussed today, not only as part of the official agenda, but also as a possible signal about the Kremlin's further plans in the war against Ukraine.
Dear comrades, we will continue large-scale efforts to strengthen the army and navy, taking into account the development of the international situation. The ability to achieve victory together for common goals is the tremendous strength of our army and our multinational society.
On February 23rd, Defender of the Fatherland Day, a ceremony was held in the Kremlin to present state awards to participants of the so-called special military operation. Several servicemen were awarded the title of Hero of Russia, and a number of others received the Order of Courage.
Russia is fighting for its future, for independence, for truth and justice.
Almost immediately after the awards ceremony, Putin held another meeting, this time with the widows of fallen Russian soldiers.
You, as the beloved family members and relatives of our dedicated servicemen and officers, will forever maintain and cherish a very important and direct connection to this. February 23rd, the motherland. The beloved motherland for which they bravely gave their lives and for which they died so selflessly defending will always be right there by your side, forevermore.
The conversation touched on support for families, the supposed all-encompassing social guarantees, and assistance for children. The dictator assured that the state would continue to give special attention and support to such families.
Today, I wanted to talk with you about how your lives are unfolding. About what can and should be done additionally to help and support you. And most importantly, to help you raise, to help you bring up our children.
Such meetings in Russian political practice always carry special significance. They demonstrate not only the official line of support, but also shape public perception of what is happening. However, most likely there is a much more pragmatic calculation behind this. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the Kremlin is trying to preemptively neutralize the main source of potential protest. Hello? Hello.
You no longer have your brave defenders with you, your loyal defenders, or your beloved families. Hello to you all.
It is precisely the relatives of the deceased, especially women, who have historically become the core of anti-war sentiment in Russia. Against this backdrop, there is increasing talk that Russia may be preparing for a new wave of mobilization. There have been no official statements on this matter so far. However, experts are paying attention to the combination of consequences, events, and rhetoric that accompanies the actions of the Russian authorities.
The people of Russia are with you and believe in you. Our soldiers and officers are true patriots, people of a special temper and unbreakable will. They are the backbone of the state and society. I thank all Russian warriors for their valiant service.
That is why the increased military rhetoric, regular public meetings with participants of the war and their families, as well as the sustained high intensity of combat operations, are drawing particular attention. For now, these are only assessments and assumptions. However, what is happening in Moscow is increasingly being viewed as part of a broader strategy. And in this context, the main question remains unanswered. Will the Kremlin limit itself to its current resources? Or could the country soon face a new wave of mobilization?
In Russia, they are fighting not only against the so-called non-opposition Telegram channels, but also against pancakes. It seems that Maslenitsa is now banned in the Russian Federation. In the Moscow region, the police were called on people who had gathered to celebrate the arrival of spring and make pancakes. As a result, Maslenitsa ended in police vans, and the celebration was labeled as Nazism.
Some kind of bullshit.
Put your hands up in the air. Right now. Go ahead and get him all packed up right now. Just make sure you process him in whatever way you need to. Please be extremely careful with him and watch every single move you make.
The symbols of Maslenitsa, pancakes, effigies of winter festivities suddenly turned into suspicious activity. That's how it goes. Today you're making pancakes, and tomorrow you're already explaining why you gathered in the woods in a crowd without the authorities' approval. That's Putin's kind of democracy. Now, even in the Kremlin, they're afraid of folklore. That's all for now. Please like this video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Ukraine Today, so you don't miss our next episodes. See you next time.